Hello, this is the Growth League podcast. My name is Caleb Clark, and my mission for this show is pretty simple. It's to learn from marketers on how they're playing the great game of marketing leadership. Their ideas, experiences, perspective, wins and losses, and the playbook that they've established over time. Listen, there's more than one way to lead a marketing team and a marketing function. So if you're a VP, a CMO, director, or someone aspiring to fill one of these marketing leadership roles in the future, tune in to learn from some of the best in the business.
You know, I always say hire smart people and let them be smart. Because the thing sometimes as marketing leaders is you get an idea in your head, but you've hired really smart people to help advise you, and it's easy sometimes to get in your own head.
So, welcome. I have my guest today, Cathy Cartier. She is currently the CMO at SLO CAL, and before then was actually a strategic advisor for Carlton and supported them. Did you support with the gathering at all in any way?
I did. I was a CMO for Las Vegas for 10 years, and so we were actually one of the original Cult Brand honorees in 2014.
So back in 2014, when you got this sort of random email out of nowhere about being nominated as a Cult Brand of the Year, did you understand what that meant? What happened?
No, we actually received a hard invitation that had this wax seal that I still talk about today. It was so crazy to get something like that in the mail that it intrigued me, and there was a website link, and I went on the link, and you couldn't quite figure out exactly what it was, and I asked our agency, had they ever heard of it? Nobody had, so we decided, what the heck, let's figure out what it is, and leaned in and filled out the form, and here we are 10 years later.
So you've been to a number of these.
Yes.
Yeah, it's evolved quite a bit over the years.
Lovely to see it grow, and the volume of people and the caliber of speaker is amazing.
It very much is. Cathy, tell us a little bit about your journey as a marketer and a marketing leader, and ultimately what brought you to SLO CAL today.
Yeah, I spent the first part of my career in healthcare and doing healthcare marketing and PR, and then transitioned into travel and tourism, and really just found a passion for telling the story and helping people realize the places they could explore, the things they could do, and how they could find themselves in those stories. And so I worked for Las Vegas for 14 years, 10 of those as CMO. And it was just an amazing experience. It's when What Happens Here Stays Here started.
Really?
So it was the early days of that campaign, and really going out on the ledge, changing from product, where we always had been talking about the product,
right,
to talking about the experience. Because what the research was telling us is that people were leaning into how Vegas made them feel.
Right.
And so we started leaning into that as well. And I would say What Happens Here Stays Here changed destination marketing forever. And so it's been just a journey of fun. I left in 2018. I did some consulting for a couple of years. I was consulting in California for SLO CAL, for the organization Visit SLO CAL, which markets the region.
Yeah.
And they asked me to stay, and I was like, well, I never planned to move to California. It was not on my list of things to do. And I thought, well, what would I want to stay here? And so I made a list of 8 things that were slightly outrageous, and asked for them, and they said okay. So that's how I ended up there.
So they must have just been pursuing Cathy. They wanted Cathy, and your 8 things were good enough.
A little synchronicity, right? I think if you put yourself out there in this world and say, hey, here's what I'm worth and what I want, you'll be surprised what happens.
Totally. And marketing lead, any professional should take that opportunity to define what good looks like to them, and what and go out and get it, right? Back to Vegas. Was there any part of your mission or job related to re-educating folks on what Vegas could be, not just come and spend all your money?
Absolutely. So, Vegas, people knew Vegas for gaming, obviously, and so we had a lot of stories to tell. We had a whole campaign called Vegas Stories, which was really showing all the other things you could do. So shopping, dining, spas, day clubs, nightclubs. There's so many things that you can do in Vegas, and now professional sports have entered the scene. And so we spent a lot of time talking about it. Can be whatever the trip you want it to be. If you want to spend all day gaming and all night gaming, you can do that. But most people don't. And the casinos were making more money on shopping, dining, and spas than they actually were on gaming.
Interesting. That's very interesting. So today, now with SLO CAL, I'll ask it this way. What do you think you get paid to do?
So SLO CAL is a baby brand.
Okay.
And what I get paid to do is to figure out how do we turn that baby brand into a cult brand. It's in the center of the Central Coast. It's north of Santa Barbara, south of Monterey. I spend half my time trying to explain where it is, San Luis Obispo County. And it's a region, it's made up of about 9 little cities. I use the term cities loosely.
Towns.
And
Towns.
unincorporated county. And it's so different because you have the classic beach towns, and then you also have wine country. So we have over 300 wineries. We have 100 miles of coastline. So we have a little bit of everything. And the pace there is very different. Our tagline is "Life's too beautiful to rush," and that is true. You can sometimes go for a coffee and the coffee shop's not open because it's a good day to surf, and the proprietor is out surfing. And so it's just a different way of life, and we attract a lot of people from LA and San Francisco because we're in the middle. And so, I get paid to tell that story and to build that up and to make that into something that is amazing.
You see Chris behind. He's giving you the bunny
I was
ears.
ignoring him.
I see a little bit of a glimmer in your eye when you talk about the mission or the mandate. Why did it pull you there? I mean, you have lots of different options, right?
I think the challenge, the thing with marketing, and people will say, why did you leave Vegas? And, it's an amazing brand, and Vegas is an amazing brand. And also you can only, I think, do something for so long. And there is value in reevaluating and deciding what comes next. Yesterday I went to Shelley Paxton's conversation where she talked about why she left Harley Davidson, and I felt like she was singing my song, where I was like, I got to the point where it wasn't good for me anymore, personally. And when I got to SLO CAL and I was consulting there, it was just this embarrassment of riches. There was so much to talk about. The story is so young, and the opportunity to tie these towns together and really sell a region is something I hadn't done. And so the challenge of getting people to say, yes, we're all one thing, and we're not Santa Barbara, and we're not Monterey, and we are amazing, was just a really fun opportunity that I couldn't pass up.
That's one thing that I have seen as a consistency with really good marketing leaders is that they may be at a great brand in a great situation, but they're seeking challenge. They're seeking something that they could put their thumbprint on. It maybe it's in its infancy. Was it more about the ability to create something from relative scratch, or was it the challenge that drew you?
I think some of both. I think the challenge of creating something from scratch, of thinking, how do you bring these people together? How do we get everyone on the same page while not dumbing down their own story, because each of the little towns is very different from one another. And so that challenge of being able to say, how do we stitch people together so that they want to band together as one and also keep their own uniqueness is just a challenge that was fun and interesting, and it's a place that is stunningly beautiful, so that didn't hurt either.
So I understand your mandate is to get them to the region, not drive them into a store.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
So my mandate is to say, choose here, anywhere in this region, and stay.
That's not an easy task, especially when there's not a lot of familiarity in the region, right? So it's a lot of education. If marketing systems and marketing leadership is a game, what fascinates you about playing the game? Why do you like it?
I think what's fascinating about the game of marketing is the levers that you can pull and push. And so the difference between paid efforts and earned efforts and owned efforts. And for me, it's been really fun to bring those teams together. I think often best practice in marketing will tell you to hire niche firms and, have them do their specialty and not cross those bounds. And yes, while we've hired niche firms who are amazing, I mandate that they work together. And in doing that, I've been able to create community amongst them and trust and vulnerability, and I think all the work is better. So when we talk about campaigns, when we talk about ideas, we don't just talk about ideas for a paid campaign or ideas for socials or ideas for PR. We talk about how can those things go across the board, and how can we amplify the voice in all of the areas and have those agencies work together. And then, I always say hire smart people and let them be smart. Because the thing sometimes as marketing leaders is you get an idea in your head, but you've hired really smart people to help advise you, and it's easy sometimes to get in your own head and not listen.
Were you at one point in your career, from a marketing standpoint, were you an individual contributor? And if so, what did you learn, or what needed to happen to pivot into leading a function and a team and maybe getting out of the way a little bit?
Yeah, I was an individual contributor for a long time, mostly in the PR space.
Okay.
And then I went into the strategic planning space. And so I was looking at all the things that could impact tourism that had nothing to do with marketing. So things like in Vegas, there was one fuel pipeline. So if something happened to that pipeline, you had a problem. There wasn't enough airlift. You had to drive the I-15 if you're coming from California, which is anybody coming from California to Vegas on a Friday knows is not a great experience. And so I worked very hard on airline development. How do we get more airlift into the city? There's 154,000 hotel rooms when I was there, and 53 million visitors. So how do you get those people there, and how do you move them around? And so as I had those experiences, what I saw was the power of collaboration and the power of bringing people together to say, how do we make it better? Because ultimately the idea comes out of that conversation somewhere that is often different than what you go in thinking. You go in thinking, okay, we're going to solve the problem this way, and you come out solving the problem a whole different way.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a total perspective change. Isn't it? Going back to your point about getting agency partners to work together, what happens when, by design, agency partners are reluctant to do that?
I think it's on the marketing leader to really create a safe environment. I think one thing is you have to pay your agencies properly, because otherwise they're competing for the bottom line and no one wins. And then I think the other thing is to really make the expectation clear about how your team is going to work, and they're part of that team, and then building trust, and which means we bring our agency partners together twice a year in person, and we spend a full day on just collaboration and strategy, and then we have an amazing fun dinner, and then the other 2 times a year on those opposite quarters we get together virtually just to talk about ideas, to just put things out there, to solve problems, but in a way that's a real collaborative conversation. We've been doing that now for 2 years, and you can see the difference. And also, I need to get out of their way as the brand leader, and sometimes they have conversations between them that I'm not involved in.
Right.
And I have to not be afraid of those conversations, and I think that's where people sometimes get hung up, is they think, well, I can't have my agencies talking to each other without me. And I encourage that. I'm like, go have smart conversations and come back with great ideas, and then we can talk about what those are.
Awesome. So we've only known each other for 12 minutes. So I hope that you trust me enough to be able to share if there's anything that causes you any pain or fear or worry about the role of a marketing leader for you. What kind of keeps you up a little bit at night?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge for me, the thing that gets in my head, is can I keep up? We hire great people, and also sometimes I listen to them talk and think, oh my God, I don't know what you're talking about. So it is that evolution of marketing and the evolution of how people are talking to one another. Right. AI is a great example of this conversation we're having around what does that mean in the tourism space, and how do we make sure that if we embrace that, we are doing it in a way where it's not just scraping information that's bad information and feeding that back out to a visitor. But it's something that I don't know a ton about. And so educating myself, it's that piece of the ever-changing landscape that is the thing that, I'm older in my career, and I look at it and go, wow, how much longer can I keep up?
So when those voices start speaking and they're loud, you talked about educating yourself in certain cases, but what do you do in moments where you just don't know? Do you feel comfortable enough to say, I don't know? Or what
Absolutely.
do you do?
I think the biggest thing I learned early in my career is trying to fake it till you make it is a really bad idea.
That's a young, foolish thing.
It's a young, foolish thing. And so what I have learned now is to ask people to explain.
Okay.
And sometimes it'll be the agency partners, or I'll be at a conference and I'll be listening to something and I'll think I need to learn more about that. And sometimes it's asking people, where do we find that resource? Like, where is the resource for the thing that you're talking about? But I really think saying what you don't know is the best way to learn.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're never going to learn.
Totally. Your job and your mandate demands a lot of energy and enthusiasm and passion. So that doesn't just happen out of nowhere for most folks. What do you do outside of the 9 to 5 to sort of fill your cup?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time outside. It's interesting because when I was in Vegas, I had young children. And when you live in Vegas, you never go to the Strip unless you're going for work, which I did often, but also there's a whole community in Vegas people don't know about. And so, in those early years of my career, I spent a lot of time with my children and all the things that you do when you have young kids. Yeah. And now my kids are in their 20s, they're out on their own. And so I really spend a lot of time hiking and just being in nature and grounding myself. I've learned the value of deep breathing,
Yeah.
the value of journaling, the value of just being in nature and allowing. I can see the ocean from my house, which is an amazing thing after you live in the desert for 25 years.
Yeah.
And it really is just soul soothing. And I think for me, that's where I can recoup, and that's where I can regather my thoughts. And
I totally agree with you. I'm the same way. Are you getting any of that out here in Banff?
I think Banff is amazing. I think what I love about Banff is it's so vast and also feels so intimate.
Right.
You know, you look at the Rockies and you just go, it's amazing. And also, I feel so comfortable in this little pocket in town. So it's just lovely for that.
It's an amazing place, special place. Over your career, when it comes to leading teams and managing, empowering, motivating, what's been your playbook for that?
I think finding out what really drives people. What is it that they really want, and how are you going to help them get there? And so I think what I have found is that people that work for me, if I can find out what their passion truly is and where do they think they want to go and help them try those things, it works. They work so much harder in a positive way. They want to contribute. They want to do new things. They want to be part of something that allows them to also grow and build, while acknowledging they may not stay with me forever. So I may pour this time and energy into someone who's amazing and I'd love to have them stay, and also know that's not their passion.
Yeah.
Then the biggest mistake I can make as a leader is trying to push them into what I want them to do instead of helping them explore what they want to do.
Right.
And so I think that little key piece of finding out who people are and what makes them tick helps me be successful.
Yeah, because they are people.
There are people who have wants and needs, and sometimes things change. You know, somebody will you hire people and they start down a path, and this has happened as well, where we'll hire someone for one job and they'll end up a year later in a completely different job because their passion was not the thing that they started doing, and what they found out was the passion was over here.
Right.
And we were able to build a bridge that allowed them to get there, and that may take 5 minutes, and it may take 5 months or 5 years.
Yeah.
But if you can help people get where they really want to be, I think it exponentially comes back to you.
And the work flows from there. Right. Do you have a process or systems or infrastructure in place, whether it's like formal or more felt, where when you're driving home at night, you can know with a high degree of certainty whether or not you did a good job that day?
I rely on my gut
a
lot, my instinct. I can usually drive home and think, yeah, we got done everything we needed to get done. I feel good about it. Or drive home and think, we need to spend more time thinking about that approach or thinking about that idea, or maybe there's a way to make something better or different, and not in a way where I'm second guessing myself, but where I'm trusting my instinct to say, I don't think we're quite there.
Right.
I think it's another mistake that you can make as a marketing leader is to get married to an idea that is down the line, where you've spent time, effort, energy, money, resources to get something. And if you just let it go and don't listen to yourself, I think that also can cause problems for you.
I agree. Marketing can be a pretty vast and vague box sometimes, and so obviously you've established your playbook in a number of different areas: budgeting, integration, team management, etc. But with inevitably, when there's external voices saying you ought to do it this way, you ought to do it that way, how do you hear it but block it to a degree and continue on?
I do a lot of nodding and smiling. I do want people to feel like they're heard.
Yeah.
And so listening to our partners and hearing what they're saying, but really trying to get to the crux of what it is that they're often what people will say is not really what they mean.
Okay.
So I do try to spend a little bit of time of, okay, what do they really mean?
Yeah.
And then decide if what they're saying and what they mean is relevant. How do I work that in to where we're going? And if what they're saying and if what they mean is irrelevant, in my opinion, how do I make them feel seen and heard and also not change direction?
Totally.
And so I think it is really active. It really is active listening and having that conversation and being willing and brave enough to say, thank you, and also I'm not going in that direction.
Right. Yeah, where earlier in careers sometimes, and actually even later sometimes, you're so manipulated by the voices that it becomes random acts of marketing at that point.
Yeah, and I think there are times when you can get, and it's happened in my career, where there are so many political forces at work that trying to navigate that landmine of how to not blow yourself up, which is why I think CMOs change jobs so often.
Right.
I was fortunate to be CMO in Vegas for 10 years, and I now have been in SLO CAL. This is going on my 3rd year. I've been fortunate to not be one of those 18-month stories.
Yeah.
But part of that is just like trying to avoid the landmines, which
Totally.
are real and true, and you have to look at with wide open eyes.
Good for you. Putting you on the spot, what would you claim to be your superpower as a marketing leader? Something that others might say, this is Cathy.
I think my superpower is getting agencies to do their best work, to be a really good client. I think I have seen in my career some really bad clients, and I'm like, why would you do that? I get more work, more dedication, more passion from my agencies because I'm not a jerk to them. And we have honest conversations. I don't love everything, but I can be respectful. I can listen to them. I can say when I don't know. I can articulate what I want and what I think I want, and also be open to letting them challenge me with what I want. And I think that is a superpower of how you get the best work done, ultimately, is when you are trying to really work with someone and you're not just trying to be, I'm the boss.
Right.
And not be a jerk.
Have you been pretty successful in understanding and realizing that agency partners are team members and they're also people as well? Have you been able to disregard that distinction between they're over there and we're here?
Yeah, very much so. I think that's how very much my strategy is for us all to be on the same team. It doesn't always work, right? Like there's some people in some agencies who don't want to work that way. And that's okay, but they're not the agency or the people for me.
Right.
And so I think finding those people where you can have that relationship is where you'll get the best work.
I agree. That's awesome. What would you say is an area right now within your marketing mix at SLO CAL that if money were no object, you would just double, triple down? Something that you and your team are like, man, this is a predictable, profitable lever.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of content creation.
Okay.
It's a never-ending beast, but there are so many stories to tell. So SLO CAL is just authentically sustainable in ways that are natural and normal to people, that they don't think twice about. And telling those stories are compelling, and they're things that visitors can do. So you can go kelp foraging, for example, which is just a really cool story to be able to tell. There's a woman who's making jewelry out of surfboard resin, which normally surfboard resin gets thrown away, right? It's colorful, hard resin that goes over the surfboard and then lands on the floor, and they chip it up and they throw it away. And she's taking this and upcycling it and making jewelry. So being able to tell that story of here are some incredible little things that are happening and people you can meet and experiences you can have. I think if we had unlimited budget, there's a lot more of that storytelling we can do, because we're constantly trying to pick and choose what are the stories we're going to tell, how are we going to tell them. We're a small budget. We are a rounding error to the Vegas budget.
Yeah, sure.
And so how do we tell those stories? The other thing that we're having a lot of conversation around is when you look at paid advertising, hiring talent and versus having your real people that really live there tell the stories, what does that look like, and where is that future going? And I'm of the belief that, maybe popular or unpopular, but I'm of the belief that paid talent is not going to tell my best story.
Right.
That tapping into some of those people that are in the community are going to tell my best story.
100%. On the converse side of that question, no marketing mix is perfect. Where is a very obvious and evident hole that you just wish was filled or improved?
Yeah, I think our website experience, that whole UX experience, where people are going and what they're looking for, and how digitally we're navigating that space in travel is a little bit tricky. So we're in the middle of actually a UX study right now, because when we look at how people are booking and finding and researching, is where are those pieces? And because technology is changing so fast, how do we keep up? And also, we have so much content on the website that it's almost too much content, right? You can't find what you're looking for because it's 17 layers deep.
Right.
So, that's a struggle.
Ongoing struggle for a lot of folks. Do you believe that having leaner, smaller budgets builds better performing marketing teams and systems, more creativity, Tell me about that. The constraint of budget.
I think it can go both ways. So I've had really big budgets. In Vegas, we had very large budgets. And we were able to try things. We were able to do things and not worry that if we spent that money, and it didn't work out, we were dead in the water.
Right.
So we were smart about it, but also were able to really experiment. And I think with a really small budget, we also do that, but in very different ways. It is how can we get one more thing to cost less so that we can try the thing without tanking our budget, because it's a little more precarious and you don't have quite as much wiggle room to experiment. So we've tried to be smart about how we experiment, because sometimes it is dollars and cents. Yeah,
no, totally. A lot of times, and I don't know if it's the case for you and your team, but a lot of times marketing teams are trying to get buy-in and understanding amongst different stakeholders and departments at the company. What has been your approach to establishing that sort of co-creation environment and feeling and buy-in, more than buy-in and understanding, but support?
We have, our company is small, so right now we are 16, we'll be 18 people when we're completely staffed. We have a couple of positions open. So getting buy-in internally is fairly easy. People are excited about what we're doing. Our CEO is passionate about the whole product and what we're doing and what we're marketing. And we also look at resident quality of life and balance that against what we're doing with our marketing efforts. And so there's a lot of conversations about how do we do both of those things well. How do we not bring over tourism to the market, but also allow economic impact from tourism. So for us, getting buy-in from our external investors, partners, and stakeholders is where we have to put a lot of time, effort, and energy. And we've been really fortunate in that in the past 2 years when we started creating this Land of campaign, and we started building this, what we call the House of Brands, because we have about 8 different distinct communities, and bringing them all together without saying, I'm going to make one like the other, and letting them know that they can lean in and work with us, and we will amplify their voice, and we're not trying to take over their voice or change their voice, has been what the challenge was coming in. And I think where we are 2 years later is in a really good place with that, because we've proven to them time and again that they are partners with a voice and that we are trying to amplify who they are. And they're all different. There's university town, there's beach towns, there's wine country. How do we allow all of those pieces to sing together? And so it is something you have to be very conscious and aware of, and figuring out how you're inviting people to the table for that conversation. And I think you made the point of it's co-creating with them and not creating for them, because they want to be part of that. They want to be part of what are we doing and how are we doing it. The other thing that we're doing, and we just launched about 2 weeks ago, is where we created this video that's really a rallying cry for the local community. We named the area SLO CAL. It's San Luis Obispo County. You're never going to get somebody to go, I'm going to San Luis Obispo County. That's not a thing. So we named it SLO CAL for marketing purposes.
It's awesome.
But when you live there, most people don't call it SLO CAL. And so we are creating not only love from the top down from their visitors, we are also creating recognition and love from the bottom up. People love living there, and they will say where they're from, but they'll often say, I'm from the Central Coast. The Central Coast is very big. And so we are running a whole now series of campaigns and initiatives to talk to the local community that are around, we are SLO CAL, which means we are not these other things, which they completely agree with. We're not Santa Barbara, we're not Monterey, we're not LA, we're not San Francisco. They don't want to be those things. And so how can we get people to collaborate together? And so that's another piece of bringing stakeholders together to say, here's who we are and here's how we can better work together.
So the SLO CAL, as an example, is that one of the threads that you use to unite, but then you tap into very individualized, not individualized, but town by town specificity within the marketing system?
Right, exactly. So SLO CAL is what we use to tie everything together. And then we talk a lot of our visitors are drive visitors from San Francisco or LA. And so we don't talk about distance, we talk about time. So we'll say you can go to the beach and in 20 minutes you can be wine tasting. Because if I say to somebody from LA, in 20 miles you can go wine tasting, they're not going. But for us it literally is 20 minutes. And so we talk about time instead of distance. And it allows us to tie communities together to say, if you're coming to do this one thing, there's 3 other things you can do that will be amazing and you'll love it. We have a lot of outdoor adventure. We have a lot of biking and hiking, and surfing and, kayaking. And so how do we tie those things together with somebody who's coming to go wine tasting?
Right.
And so explaining that story and how all those little pieces are different, but under the SLO CAL banner
That's awesome.
is where we're at.
That's great. So if you could kind of reverse history 13, 14, 15 years ago, and whenever it was where you were just getting into your post at in Vegas, what are some things that you would do wildly different because you have the benefit of time and understanding? Is there anything that rises to the top, like, dang, I would have done that differently?
Yeah, I think I look back now and I think I sometimes approach things from a lens of I know.
Okay.
Or prove it to me.
Right.
We did everything in Vegas was really based off research, which is great. And also you can get stuck there from a creative lens when there's creative ideas coming, and I was very focused on prove to me that that's the thing.
Okay.
And I think sometimes trust. I learned how to trust the partners, but that was not something I came in doing. I think when you come in as a young marketing leader, there is a need to prove yourself.
Right.
And so how you prove yourself, I have gotten better over the years.
Yeah. Now, saying just trust the recommendations and the ideas easier in theory than in practice. Is there anything that you might recommend to early marketing leaders that can allow them to adopt that approach, but give some guardrails to?
Yeah, I think you have to trust yourself first, right?
Okay.
I think there's a reason why you're in the job you're in, and so you're not giving away the store. So you're building trust, you're building vulnerability, and also you're ultimately responsible. And so I think always remembering that you're ultimately responsible and to trust yourself is also super important. And I think the other piece of advice I'd give is really ask questions so that when you make a decision, you understand as best you can what all the options are, and then you can say, okay, we're going to go left or right based on what I know today. And if in 5 years from now you look back and go, well, I could have done that differently, that's okay. You made the decision that was best at the time.
Right. So in this part of the show, I have one more thing after this, but you get to ask me something. Anything that is on your mind that you'd like to ask me?
Yeah, as you talk to brand leaders, I'm curious, what is the one commonality that you hear from people that kind of threads through everybody that we as brand leaders may not realize?
I was reflecting on this last night, but even in episodes in the past, I think that there's an element of once you have a bit of experience under your belt, and that could be 6 months into a job, whatever, but allowing things to settle and take a 10,000 foot view of things and be able to transition very quickly between the dirt and the clouds, and then lead through humility, people smarts, and gut, right, and heart. But ultimately, what I've learned is as a common recurring theme is that you have to believe in the why, what you're doing. You have to understand what you get paid to do at the end of the day, and be able to very effectively block out the noise and just stay consistent. And when those moments in time come where there's uncertainty, lean into the team as compared to separate. So that's one thing that comes to mind. There's a lot of truths that come, but it all revolves around there's a lot of different ways to play this game, but play it with enthusiasm, with passion, and with conviction, and it's just going to be a fulfilling experience. That's what I've learned.
Yeah, very true.
So leave us with this. What is, when you think about a year, 2 years, 5 years from now, specifically with the region, with SLO CAL, what comes into clarity? What do you think, all of your efforts, what does that mean for the future of the region?
I think for the future of the region, it means continued economic stability and impact. And it means this ability to create, I'm excited about being able to create a cult-like brand from the top down and the bottom up. Yeah. It's new, we're young, we're baby, just starting. And so the opportunity to learn how to walk and run and really play the game, to me, is where we're at. And that's exciting.
That's awesome. Cathy Cartier, everyone, thank you so much for sharing your journey, your experience, and your playbook on this role and this function. I appreciate it.